the leadership bottleneck no one warned you about. If you've ever looked outside your office at a long line of people waiting for your attention, or you have found yourself staring at a slew of emails waiting on your response, at some point you're likely to start wondering how you became the sole decision maker for almost everything. And guess what? If you've had this experience, you're not alone. Over time, more and more questions start coming back to us. People wait for confirmation before they move. Conversations stall until we weigh in. Decisions that should live elsewhere somehow find their way back to our desk. It doesn't feel like control. It feels like responsibility. We tell ourselves we're staying close to the work because the direction matters and the stakes are high now. We're the ones who see the full picture. We're the ones who understand where the organization is headed and what matters most and what doesn't. And when the vision lives mostly in our head, that's what we're talking about today, decisions naturally flow back to the only person who sees it clearly. And that's how a bottleneck forms, not because the team lacks ability, but because the vision hasn't been shared enough for others to act with confidence. Bum, 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 bum.
You know, it's so funny, Eric. I just heard this on a call right before we hopped into podcast. I had a leader sharing that they were frustrated that a team member pushed back on a decision that they made, and they said those exact words. They don't understand the full picture. And that is a weight that we carry as leaders. But it can also become a problem that we have unintentionally created, because when decisions keep routing back to us, when they keep finding their way back to us, it's easier sometimes for us to assume that it's a team problem, right? We talk about this all the time because that is our default. That is the default of most leaders that we lead. What's wrong with my team? But the bigger question that we want to ask on this episode is, why is it that our team doesn't see the vision as clearly as we do? Why doesn't the team see the full picture? Why don't they know what they're fighting for? What we together as a team are fighting to accomplish. And when that doesn't happen, when they don't have the full picture, when they don't know what they're fighting for, of course, they're going to be looking back to us like, is this right? Is this the way I'm supposed to be going? So Eric, when we find ourselves as leaders in this common situation that you just described for us, what is the common culprit? What have we created?
Yeah, well, this is so common because we start businesses, or we are leading because we carry some kind of vision, a picture of what it is we're fighting for, want to accomplish. And so if our listeners are resonating with like, yeah, I think I might be guilty of this, know you're in good company.
Yes.
It's totally okay. And there are some simple ways that we can remedy this so that we're not operating in this kind of tension that we're describing. It's just good to know that growth in our business increases complexity, right? There's more going on, more decisions that have to be made, more problems that need to be solved. And complexity increases the need for shared vision, because I often say this, the solution to complexity is not greater complexity.
Right.
It's actually simplicity.
Yeah.
And so our connection to a shared vision is what drives the simplicity, right? Rather than just looking for greater complexity. When the direction that we're heading in isn't consistently reinforced, the leader becomes the only interpreter of that vision. And when only one person consistently sees how decisions connect to the bigger picture, everybody starts to defer to us, right? And so I think as leaders, we need to recognize that we can inadvertently hoard the kind of the clarity and the confidence, right, that comes from having the vision, right? And so we answer quickly because we see how it connects, right? We're the ones who see everything. We stay involved because we understand the trade-offs in any decision that's being made. We weigh in because we know what alignment looks like and what it doesn't look like. And over time, our team learns that the safest move is kind of check back in with us, right, and get us to weigh in. That the final direction really lives with us as the leader, and and they learn that initiative carries a risk that they're not really ready to step into because they're again unclear or uncertain about how to move forward. And even strong teams can hesitate when they don't fully understand where the organization is headed. They aren't sure what matters most in right now, or they can't clearly connect their decision to the larger vision, right? And so bottlenecks don't form because we want to have all the control in the world, not
Right.
always, anyways. They form because clarity has not been distributed.
Yeah. And this starts to create some significant ripples on our team. And we might see them show up with things like our team saying, I don't know, that's just the way that the leader wants it done. Or I don't know why we do it this way. We've just always done it this way, right? Those are some clear indicators that your team does not know how what you are asking them to do connects to the vision.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing for us leaders is that it can feel really practical, right? I just shared a leader said these exact words to me today, right? The idea of it just feels safer if I decide. Like I'm the one that sees the picture. It's just safer if I do it. They don't have the full context, right? They don't understand the big picture.
Yeah.
I don't want the team to start to drift from the direction that I see so clearly in my head.
Yeah.
But when we as leaders are the only people that see that direction clearly, it means our teams are going to move real slowly.
That's
It
right.
means their confidence in their ability to make decisions is going to be really low. And it also means that our frustration, that picture you painted at the top of this episode of like, why am I having to make all these decisions? And that ensures that is a weight that we're going to continue to carry.
That's right.
And eventually what's going to happen is that and we see this, our organizations are going to plateau, not because our teams aren't talented or because they don't want to fight for the vision, but because they don't clearly understand the vision or what it is that they're fighting for.
Yeah.
So, Eric, how do we unpack this and think about this well as leaders?
Yeah. So I like to often use the analogy of a compass, right? The whole point of a compass when we're out at sea, back before we had all these state-of-the-art GPS systems, but the whole point of a compass was that it always shows me due north. And that's what a vision does. It provides us clarity around what is due north. Because just like when you're out at sea, in turbulent weather, in the evening, it's cloudy and you can't see the stars, that compass provides clarity of direction, and the confidence to stay a particular course, right? So now imagine you're out at sea and you've lost your external reference points and you have no compass. That's what I think oftentimes people down chain in an organization start to feel like. Like, I'm not really sure where due north is. I'm not really sure what direction we're trying to go in, but I have a job, I have a responsibility, so I'm just going to keep plugging away. And I remember this one person saying to me, just a couple of degrees of a trajectory shift over a long period of time can take you miles from where you actually want to be. And so as leaders, I think we can get frustrated with our teams. Like, why don't you understand? Why are you making those decisions? How do you not see where we're trying to go? And that's usually a good indicator that we are hoarding the vision. And I say that it is in strong language because I don't think we understand as leaders how incredibly important it is, not only to clarify the vision that's in our heads, but to articulate it, and then to disseminate it in a way that means it can become shared vision, right? Let me just add one more little thing. There's an old proverb that says, without vision, people languish. we as human beings are inspired by a clear vision of what we're fighting for, what we're trying to accomplish, the direction we're trying to go in, the destination, whatever you want to say. We're actually motivated and inspired by that vision. And so, um, if we find that our people are waning in terms of their motivation, their energy, their excitement, their optimism, more often than not, it's a good sign that they are disconnected from the vision. And as leaders, we've got it, it lives inside of us. And so that's why I say we've got to be careful that we're not vision hoarders,
Yeah, that's really
right?
good. And
Keeping it to ourselves.
I love that analogy of the compass, because the modern analogy would be Google Maps or your map app on your phone, which I love because you type in the vision, where are you wanting to go? You type it in to the search bar. And then what does it do? It charts you a course. And yet, inevitably, you make a wrong turn. Good Lord, when I'm driving with you, we are inevitably going to make a wrong freaking turn.
Now, hold on. For our listeners, just let me explain myself. I am not a multitasker. I am so bad at this, so that when I'm in a car with another human being and we're talking, it is almost guaranteed that I will miss at least one or two or even three turns, uh, even if it's only like a 10-15 minute trip. So I'm just explaining myself here for a
Yeah,
second. But
totally.
yes, yes.
But so the beauty of that is, what does the app do? I mean, poor Siri, she was working overtime with you
Yeah.
that day, but what does she do? She says, no problem. You got off course. That's okay.
Yeah.
Recalculating.
Recalculating.
And why can she do that? Because she knows where we're headed.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true for our teams. When we know where we're headed, what we're fighting for as a team, look, inevitably, we're going to get off course.
That's
Inevitably, we're going to make a wrong turn. Inevitably, we're going to make a mistake, drop a ball, whatever. When we are clear on the vision, it's no problem.
Yep. Our ability to recalibrate and what did you say? Recalculate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, is far easier.
That's right.
So let me throw this out, right, for our listeners. So we're making a case that vision cannot live primarily inside of one person, right? It can be birthed within an individual.
It can originate.
It can originate within an individual. But if we want distributed ownership on our teams, then we need to distribute the vision and clarity, right? The leader's job isn't just to carry the vision, it's to make it unmistakably clear for our team, for our people. And again, this isn't just for business owners, right? This is for if you're leading any kind of team, then whatever vision that you have for how that team's going to operate and what they're going to accomplish, and what they're trying to achieve has to be distributed into that particular team. And that what this means is that repeating direction, repeating the vision until it becomes shared language. I once heard somebody say, as leaders, we need to share the vision over and over and over and over and over and over again. And just when we think we've shared it enough, we got to keep sharing it again and again and again. And that's because we as human beings, we have what we call leakage. Like we start to lose sight of the vision. We lose clarity of the vision. We lose connection to the vision. No problem. We need to reconnect to that vision over and over. I mean, how maddening would it be if you're like 10 minutes into a drive, you've put the GPS system on your phone, and then Siri pops on, is like, hey, can you just remind me where we're going again?
I forgot where we're going.
Yeah, I forgot where we're going. I'd be like, what is this app good for? Are you kidding me? But that's how people feel, right? Because we as human beings, we're not an app, we're not a software program. We have what we call vision drift. Where we lose sight of that vision, we drift away from it, we lose due north. So we've got to share it over and over and over and over and over until everybody knows the vision, everybody can repeat it. it also comes with, as leaders, making sure that we're defining what matters most right now in this season,
Mhm.
right? So we're constantly clarifying what we're trying to achieve, clarifying how decisions connect to the bigger picture, what's at stake in the decisions we're making, and then making sure that we're really clear about the trade-offs, right? That we're not just assuming that everybody knows what the trade-offs are. And we wrestle with this all the time internally as a team because we've got a lot of projects that we're either launching or trying to get traction on. And so if I, as a leader, am not providing a clear vision, which I have failed at times to provide, then all I can expect from my team is vision drift, vision drift, vision drift, right? And I think when our teams are connected to the vision, right, then confidence spreads,
Yeah.
decision making spreads, ownership spreads.
And I would add motivation
Mm,
spread, initiative spreads, Um, it reminds me, I love how you said we have to repeat the vision ad nauseum, and then we have to define what matters most right now.
yeah,
Because as leaders, we're constantly responsible for multiple things. We're responsible for that big vision, that far away vision, and we're responsible for, great, what do we need? What's in our current
yeah,
landscape, right? If you think of it like a road trip, and you get to that stretch of road that's like long and straight, and you feel like you can see forever, and you can kind of see way off in the distance there's some shape of some mountains. That's like the far out vision that we're looking for. Like, I
yeah,
see that vision, I know that's where I'm headed. But we also have to contend with, what is the landscape that's in front of me right now? What's happening on the road in front of me right now? What is mattering most? Right? Is the road going to turn? Are there dips? Are there potholes? And as the leader, we are responsible for both of those things. And we fall into a gutter when we over focus, or we only focus on one of those things. We have to
hmm
do both. What is that mountain range that we're driving towards in the distance, and what are the things that we're fighting for right now, that we're contending with right now, that are going to give us the best chance to get there?
yeah. It reminds me. What you're sharing reminds me of why we spend so much time with clients, almost on a yearly basis, traveling and spending time with them on site to take them through what we call a diagnostic and strategic planning process, where what they ultimately, create as a feature of this time together is this very simple strategic plan that lays out very clearly what do they want the next 3 years to look like, what's the next year like, what does the next 6 months look like. It serves like the GPS map system on our phones, right? I mean, it's one thing if you're driving 10 minutes down the road with your GPS system, but it's another thing if you're saying, "Hey, currently in Southern California and I want to travel up to Lake Tahoe to do some skiing." Well, there's probably multiple points along the way that are like check marks of like, what are we fighting for between here and there? It may not just be the long-term vision of like, okay, Lake Tahoe. It might be, oh, we want to travel through this part of the state. We want to see these things. And so I love what you're saying, because I think for us as leaders, it's not just about having really clear long-term and short-term vision, but it's also learning how to provide for our teams that roadmap that gives us all the confidence. Are we still on track? Like, that's what I love about the GPS map, is that there's a blue line. Am I on the blue line still? Like,
Yeah.
that's the blue line. That's the line I need to be on. There's a lot of different roads I could potentially take to get to where I want to be. But what is that? What is that blue line for myself, for my team? And I think, again, where does that begin? Clear vision.
Yeah, I love that. um let's jump into some real stories. Where have we seen this play out for people?
Yeah, I love that. Well, why don't you start, and then
Okay,
I'll jump in.
I will actually start with a personal example, because this came to mind as we were sharing. This doesn't only, and I think you brought this up actually, this doesn't only apply to our businesses. we can and should have a vision for different areas of our life. In fact, I was talking to a friend this week who is having a hard time in her marriage. And their family faces a lot of difficulties in general. You know how some people just seem like life is harder for some people than others. Like their life, they have a lot of challenges. And my friend was sharing with me the frustration of it feels like she can't get her husband on board with making some changes that will result in ultimately, you know, a better marriage, a better family environment, all sorts of things, better outcomes for their kids. And I shared with her, I said, do you have you created a vision for your marriage? Because right now you are bringing your husband problems that he needs to fix, things about himself that he needs to change, right? And when we don't attach things to a larger vision, it really can feel like somebody's just telling us, change this, do that better.
Yeah.
And so I said, if you and your husband work to create a vision of what do we want to be fighting for in our marriage? What do we want our marriage to look like in 5-10 years? Now, suddenly, you're not coming to him with problems that need to be changed. You're coming to him to say, what is going to give us the best chance of reaching that vision? What changes collectively do we need to make that are going to help us get there in our marriage? Like, vision also, I think, like, and this came up with a client this week as well. Vision means we are not just pointing a finger at somebody. We are together turning to look at what we want to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
And it becomes about course correcting, recalibrating, right? Again, to where we're trying to get to, as opposed to, why do you keep doing that again? Why aren't you making this change? Why aren't you, whatever the laundry list of things is that sometimes we carry around with people of what we would like for them to be doing differently or better, right? It becomes more about, hey, is that thing helping us get to this shared vision that we agreed upon?
Yeah. I love that. It reminds me of, Simon Sinek's book, Start with the Why. And he so appropriately distinguishes between the why and the what and the how, right? If we don't have a clear why for our marriage, for our business, for our relationship with our kids, for our health, for our finance, if we don't have a clear why, then all we're focused on is the what, then life becomes this kind of trudging through the mud of overcoming obstacles and challenges and fixing things, and but without really any clear inspiration or motivation for why we're doing these things. So I love what you're saying, like this example, because it's not just this woman and her husband. Like, this is what leaders experience with their teams. The teams kind of get bogged down in the daily grind of what they're trying to do and accomplish, but to the degree that that's connected from the why we're fighting this fight. I mean, if you think of all the great wars in history, why do people put their lives on the line to go and battle? Because they have bought into the why. Yeah. This is why we're doing this. Is why we're fighting. This is why we get up in the morning and go to the gym. This is why we choose to shop at a store where we can get healthier food. This is why we're saving money. This is why we're saying yes or no to anything. And this is just a great, I know this wasn't kind of in our notes for today, but I think it's such a powerful reminder as leaders in any context of life, that to the degree that the what's of our everyday life are not connected to a clear why, we will lose motivation. We will experience, I think oftentimes this is where depression can start to set in. Because then it just feels like life is hard for no reason. Life is hard. Like we all know that life is hard. Marriage is hard. Raising kids is hard. Finances is hard. Everything's hard. Life is hard, right? But what makes the hard worth it is that it's connected to a clear why, something that motivates us and inspires us, some sense of purpose and significance. And I think that's where vision sits. It sits at that place to say, the hard is worth it. This is the right kind of hard because you're moving towards something that feels significant and
Yeah,
meaningful and purposeful.
that's really powerful. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I love that. And just, from my own perspective, um, I am a natural visionary type human being, right? That's the world I feel most comfortable living in and playing in. Um, but over the years, I've had to really fight hard to not change the vision every day or every week or every month. You and I talked about on this podcast that my temptation is, I've got new vision every 10 minutes, and then I like to share it with people, and then everyone goes, "Oh, there's the new compass, there's the new due north, there's the new direction." And it can be really fatiguing and frustrating, right? For people trying to follow us. And so I'm just bringing a kind of another angle to this
Yeah, good.
conversation. For those of you out there who are visionary leaders and who love to communicate your vision, to also make sure that you're not changing the vision too often and causing people to develop what we call vision fatigue. Like, I can't keep running after a new vision every week because it doesn't feel like we're actually getting anywhere.
Yeah.
And which, of course, I'm guilty of having done with our team at different times. That's why we have the funny saying of, like, don't jerk the steering wheel,
Uh-huh.
right? You keep changing the direction, right? It's no different than, again, what if Siri was like, "Hey, I thought of another place you could drive to. I thought of a different destination. I thought of an."
How about
You'd be
this
like,
spot?
"Hey Siri, how about we just stick to with the vision that we started with?"
You never get anywhere, which is the frustration that teams experience when visionary leaders get excited about a new vision.
Yeah,
The frustration isn't, gosh, it's a new vision, because visionary leaders typically can cast their vision really well. So you're like, ooh, that sounds exciting.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah,
The
oh yeah,
fatigue comes when you look behind you and you're like, goodness gracious, we've been working for 6, 9, 12 months, and I don't feel like I've accomplished anything
yeah,
because
yeah.
we changed our direct, like we've been driving in circles. Siri kept moving our destination around, and we've just been driving aimlessly.
Yep. And so whether we fall on the side of hoarding the vision internally and we're not sharing it often enough and clearly enough, or whether we are changing the vision because we have a new vision every 10 minutes, either way, um, the results are unfortunate and very frustrating for our teams. So let me just throw out a couple of quick thoughts, practical thoughts for our listeners, and then we'll pause for a takeaway moment. Um, I think for us as leaders, let's start by asking some really important questions. Where is the vision clearest? Is it clearest in my head, or is there actually a shared vision on our team? In other words, can I ask my team members what the vision is and they can articulate it,
Yeah.
maybe in their own words, but in a way that reflects the vision that we've shared? It's worth paying attention to where are decisions continually coming back to my desk, which means that people probably don't have clarity around the vision and don't feel confidence to make their own decisions. And do those people actually understand how those decisions connect to our overall
Yeah.
direction and
And that's a
vision?
key one. That's key.
Yes, absolutely. And so our job as leaders is to continually, clarify what are our current priorities? Like, what is it that we're trying to achieve? What are the trade-offs? What are the guardrails? And what does alignment look like as we continue to, travel in a particular direction? If we're not providing that constant recalculation, I love that phrase. If we're not providing that for our teams, then guess what? Drift will occur. And if we're not careful, we will find ourselves in a very different place than we originally set out, to achieve. So let's do this. Let's pause here for our listeners to give our wonderful listeners a moment to reflect on what's your one big takeaway from the conversation today. And what's that one thing that, if you don't remember anything else from this podcast, that you feel like is worth putting in your pocket, that's going to help you elevate your life and your leadership? Take a moment, consider what that is, write it down, lock it in your brain, share it with a friend. Listen, if today helped you see why decisions keep landing back on your desk, then it's worth paying attention to, because when the vision is shared clearly and it is disseminated and not hoarded, confidence spreads and leadership stops bottlenecking.
That's right. And if you are here with us today and you want to keep strengthening your skills in leadership, how you distribute clarity, how you build confident decision makers, join us for our monthly Empower Masterclass. As the name would suggest, they happen every month. You can save your seat at mpwrcoaching.com/masterclass or scroll down to the show notes and there will be a link for you there.
And next week, we'll continue unpacking what's actually holding teams back and how leaders can delegate responsibility without creating confusion. We love you, dear listener. Thank you for spending your time with us, and we'll see you next time.